This week on We Women Want, we're going to be
Welcome back. You're watching NewsX and I'm Shivani Singh. Now, the United States, Russia and Ukraine rarely agree on anything. But as their delegations met in Abu Dhabi for their first trilateral meeting since the war in Ukraine began, the three parties seem to have come to the same conclusion. Only one issue remains to be resolved, and that issue is territory, which is namely the eastern Ukrainian region known as Donbas. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has reiterated time and again that Kyiv won't give up any of its territory to Russia, including Donbas. However, Russian President Putin and his aides have repeatedly threatened to take the territory by force if Kyiv doesn't give up. So, this is something that we are looking at. That trilateral meeting, it happened, the first round happened on Friday, and on Saturday, which is today, we will see the negotiations continue. Remember, officials from all three sides, including Russia, Ukraine and the US, are currently in Abu Dhabi to discuss this further, and all of them agree on one single conclusion, that in fact there is this territory issue that remains unresolved. So, this is the territory that we are talking about, is the Donbas region. Now, remember that this is something that Russia has always wanted. We have seen during the 4 years of the war that it tried to take over some of the territories of Donbas as well. There are 4 regions that entirely comprise of the Donbas, and from that Russia has in fact invaded 2 of them. Ukraine has control over the other 2. Let me in fact to take this discussion further with Ambassador Gauri Shankar Gupta, former diplomat. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast. A very good afternoon to you. Ambassador, there is one sticking point since the past 4 years that all the parties have agreed to. It's the Donbas region. Ukraine does not want to give up its territory, and Russia eagerly wants to take over the Donbas region. And obviously, it has its reasons. It's a very mineral rich area. It was highly industrialized before the Cold War, even though now it's very rusty. But before that, it was a booming industrial belt, and it has minerals like we have mentioned, and it was also very fertile agricultural land, some of the best in the world. So, obviously, Russia is eyeing that, and Ukraine does not want to give up that advantage. How are you looking at this entire situation that is currently unfolding in Abu Dhabi?
Good afternoon, Shivani. Actually, this is not one issue. This is the core issue of the entire dispute. The issue on which the conflict started between Ukraine and Moscow is this issue precisely. You see, this region, which is approximately 20% of Ukrainian territory, is dominated by Russian-speaking people. And the Russian-speaking people were denied right by the Ukraine to speak their language and to follow their traditional customs and rituals. A law was passed denying them this right, I think around 2016 or 2017. And thereafter, a lot of negotiations were held, the Minsk I and Minsk II, to change that process. But Ukraine refused to do that. And as a result, the Russia, took what they call a special military operation in this region, because they wanted to protect the Russian-speaking population from being forcefully adopting the Ukrainian traditions. And that is why this whole process started. So it is not the only issue. This is the core issue of the entire dispute. Unless Ukraine agrees to part with this territory, I don't think there would be any peace agreement between the 2 countries, and the war will continue. If it is not in a form of war, it will continue in the form of a conflict. Now it has completed 4 years, and it will enter the another year of conflict. So I feel that the two sides should agree to resolve this particular issue. This would be the core in Abu Dhabi. This is what they need to discuss. I think the Russian side has made it very clear to Americans that unless this is conceded, there is no way any peace agreement could be signed. I think President Trump has also made it clear to Ukraine, but Ukrainians are not agreeing to it, and they are being backed up by some of the European countries, and that is why the whole thing is stuck. And unless there's some sort of agreement on this territorial issue, nothing will move forward. That is my view, Shivani.
Ambassador, you spoke about the Russian speaking people over there. Obviously that's very important, but this area is really strategic as well. Ukraine also does not want to give up. We have that port of Mariupol, I think, which is strategically very important because it grants access to the Black Sea. So, sir, obviously Russia also wants that port because it wants to look at the west from that angle as well. But do you see a middle way somehow coming out from these talks? Because for the first time all the three parties are agreeing on something, that this is the point that needs to be resolved in order to solve that war.
Shivani, as of now, I do not see any middle path, because Russian president and Russian population, they have made a lot of sacrifice to gain control over this region. Of course, Ukraine has also done that, but Ukraine has done in defending it. The process is presently this land is in the possession of Russia. They have lost, I don't know how many thousand soldiers in this process. Their sacrifice would be completely in vain if they give it up now. So I do not see any compromise from the Russian side on sacrificing this land which is under their control. On the other hand, Ukraine is saying that they cannot legitimize it, they cannot give it to Russia, they cannot consider it as Russian territory, and therefore this will remain a sticking point. The other issue that it's a land where there are a lot of industrial units, there's also rich agricultural fields in that area. Of course, that is important for both the countries, but the conflict did not start because of that. The conflict started because the Ukrainian adopted a law which was banning these Russian-speaking people of their customs, traditions, and what they call religious practices, and that was one of the most contentious issue, apart from other things which happened in the process. So I don't think that Russia would agree to give up this area as of today. I don't see any possibility at all.
All right. So if there is no middle way, if you do not see Russia as well giving up that land that it has in fact conquered during the war, how do you see this war going forward? It's already been 4 years, sir. Both the countries are still at it. US is trying to negotiate a peace deal. How do you see things looking like going forward, if you think that these trilateral talks will also in fact fail?
Like some of these wars, they end up on their own. They slowly diffuse and settle on their own. This is going to that process, because this cannot continue forever. Nobody has money to continue this war, and I'm certain that Ukraine will not have the funding, will exhaust at some stage, and the people are also not there. Ukraine has already is already forcing some of the elderly people to join the war, because their young people are less in number. Those who were there, they have also migrated to other countries. So ultimately it will peter out on its own. It may not be declared at the end of what you call conflict, but the conflict zone will not have many soldiers to fight against, and that is how it will end up if they do not agree to some sort of reconciliation at this stage.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us.